Hello everyone, how are you doing? This is Faith at Faith and Books. Today I'm going to do a video inspired by Victoria at A Musical Bookworm, and I will link to her channel. She did a video called, oh, now I forget the exact title, but it was something about 24 and 24. So she's picking 24 books off her shelves that she hasn't gotten around to reading yet. And she's going to try to read them in the year 2024. I really like this idea. A few years ago, I did a year of reading one's own, and that was hosted by Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading and her husband Jason at Old Blue Chapter and Verse. I think at Old Blues Chapter and Verse. And I was really good at it. I really stuck to it. The one exception was that year I was doing a Louisa May Alcott reading event, which we were reading one of her books every month. And so some of those I had to purchase. But everything else I read off my shelf. So it was a good thing. I don't want to restrict myself to that this year. But it is really a good idea to look through your shelves if you collect too many books and, read what you've got. And so I really like the idea of reading 24 and 24. So as I said, I'll link to her video and you can watch hers. So I thought I would just get started here. The first one is, I'm actually going to start this year because for the new liturgical year, Advent starts December 3rd, and I'm going to start reading this. And this is going to be sort of my default theology read for the whole year. I'm just going to dip in and out of it. It's a chunker, and it's theology by Romano Guardini, who's a beautiful writer. He was an Italian theologian, priest and theologian. And so this is going to be a book that I'm just going to plan to dip in and out of and try to get through as reading it through the whole year. So, The Lord by Romano Guardini. And this I bought a year ago, almost. When I went on my retreat last Advent, just as Advent was starting, I bought this in the bookshop of the monastery. So it's been sitting on my shelf just for you. Then here are the novels. I have 4 novels that I've been meaning to get to for a while and haven't. So the first one is this one, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. I don't know how to say it. And I bought this on impulse a few years ago when it was kind of a buzz. It was making a big buzz on BookTube, and I never read it. And then I saw a review by Jim at Jim's Books and Things, reading books and things and stuff. Anyway, he has a nice channel. And he did a review which was kind of critical, but also still made me want to read it. So I'm going to attempt this. I understand it's probably pretty tragic and depressing, but I am interested in reading it. So I'm going to try that one. Oh no, I'm getting a frog in my throat. This is a book that my daughter bought me when my husband was in the hospital one of his times, and I didn't have anything to read. She picked this up at a drugstore, and it looks like a light but, maybe interesting story set during World War II. So I thought, might as well give it a try. So yeah, so I'm going to try that one. This book, Things Fall Apart, by Chinua Achebe. I bought this, I'd heard about this for years, and I bought this way back when I was participating in the Africa Cup that Mark at Book Time with Elvis was hosting, but I never got to it. So I understand this is also very tragic, but it's like a modern classic. So I'm going to try. I bought this used, as you can see, but I'd like to finally get this read. And then the last novel that I have on my list here is by Leo Tolstoy. I want to read more Russian literature in 2024, and I have plans to read a lot. And this is one because it's sitting on my shelf. I think from the bookmark of Politics and Prose. I must have gotten it from my Aunt Jackie, because she lived near that, and she was in book clubs at that store. It's a well-known bookstore in Washington, D.C. I don't get on that well with Leo Tolstoy. I read Anna Karenina many years ago, and I thought it was powerful, and I'm glad I read it, but I have no desire to reread it. I really didn't like the main characters. Most of the characters I didn't like. The relief to me was Kitty and Levin and their love story. But the rest of it just kind of left me cold. I don't know if I agreed with Tolstoy and how he was presenting things. I have read a couple of short stories by him that I really enjoyed. I've attempted War and Peace a few times and can't get into it at all. I can never get traction. But this looks maybe a little bit more doable. I don't know. And I've never heard of it. So I was thinking, what if I tried this instead of War and Peace? This sounds really interesting. It says, a prostitute stands accused of murder. Prince Nekhlyudov serves on the jury at her trial. He recognizes her as the innocent young girl he once loved, seduced, and abandoned. The story is compelling, the telling of it as masterful and exuberant as only the author of War and Peace and Anna Karenina could make it. But the setting of resurrection is the underworld, and Tolstoy turns a highly critical eye on the law, the penal system, and above all, the church. With its theme of fallen man and an emphatically non-Christian process of regeneration, the novel presents a mature panorama of Russian life shot through with searing spiritual intensity. I think that sounds very interesting. So, yeah, I'm going to try and read that one too. So that's 5 so far, right? Yeah. And then I'm kind of lining this up according to events that I usually participate in on BookTube. So if they're going to host Feb Regency again, it would be the 3rd year. I'm thinking of these 2 books for Feb Regency. This one I started to read last Feb Regency and only got a few pages in. Love the writing style. I follow this woman. Well, I gave up Instagram, but I used to follow her on Instagram. She's great. She's one of the few reasons to get on Instagram that will pay off for you. But anyway, I'm going to start it again and read it. And it's Uproar, Satire, Scandal, and Printmakers in Georgian London. So that would be a good thing to read for Regency. And then a friend of mine gave me this. It's The Tragedy of Mariam, the Fair Queen of Jewry, with the Lady Falkland, Her Life, by one of her daughters. This came out in like 1619 or something really early. So it's way before the Regency period, but I'm thinking it influenced it. And the fact that a woman wrote this play, and is it 2 plays? Let's see, there's so many notes in here. It's just, the book is mostly notes. The Tragedy of Mariam. Yeah, it's all The Tragedy of Mariam, okay. Yeah, so anyway, this would be an interesting read, and I'm slating that for February, possibly. Okay, and then the next thing is Middle Grade March. And my youngest daughter loved the Penderwicks series. She got all the books eventually. And I never read them. And I've heard other parents rave about them. And so I think that I want to try nice and light for March. I think I want to try reading all the Penderwicks. So there's the Penderwicks, A Summer Tale of 4 Sisters, 2 Rabbits, and a Very Interesting Boy. The Penderwicks on Gardam Street. This one is, what's the title of this? Where is it? Where's the title page? Oh, The Penderwicks at Point Mouette. And I don't know if these are, yeah, I think these are in order. The Penderwicks in Spring. And then this last one is The Penderwicks at Last. So I'm going to try and read those in March. Then Shakespeare. In September, when they celebrate Shakespeare, I always look forward to that event. And I happen to have 2 books that I've been wanting to read. Now, none of these books are rereads. I have another book that I want to reread about Shakespeare. So I have too much slated for September here, because I'm not even including actually reading a Shakespeare play, which I don't know what I want to read yet. But anyway, since I've been reading this book by Thomas Merton, and he studied at Columbia, and one of his professors was Mark Van Doren, who, unfortunately, after Thomas Merton's book was published, which was 1948, I think in the 50s, he got caught up in some sort of game show scandal, which kind of ruined his reputation. But before that, he was a very revered scholar. And Thomas Merton says the best class that he ever took was Mark Van Doren's Shakespeare. And I happen to have it. I think this, again, was my Aunt Jackie's. So I don't know if I'm going to read it from cover to cover, but I certainly want to dip into it and see what he's got to say. I think that would be really neat. And maybe I'll pick a play that he talks about in this book. See, most of these I've read. Troilus and Cressida. I haven't read that one. My Trouble in the Merry Wives of Windsor. I don't really like the comedy so much. King John, The Merchant of Venice, Richard II. Did I read that one, or did I read Richard III? I think I read Richard II. It'd be neat to see what he says about it. Anyway, here's Richard III. I was thinking of reading Richard III. Yeah. So, okay, so I'm going to do that. And then another Shakespeare. It's a textbook for language arts. But I've had it on my shelf and I've never really gone through it. So I think for next September, I'm going to actually try to work through this a bit. This is by Sister Mariam Joseph, and she was a well-known classical scholar. So two well-known classical scholars, both of them happen to be Catholic. And I think I'm going to, they're not the type of books that you read cover to cover, but I think I'm going to delve into them as deeply as I can in September, in Shakespeare. And then, okay, so how many has that been so far? That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, so these are memoirs or nonfiction. So like that. So this is The Letters of Vincent van Gogh. And I personally would like to do a buddy read. I think this would take a couple of months to read. And so if anyone's interested in a buddy read, reading The Letters of Vincent van Gogh, I was inspired to get this because my sister Sharon, who went to art school for a while and is very interested in art, read it and recommended it to me. So, but I bought it and then it just sits on the shelf. So if anyone wants to buddy read this with me, that would be really neat, and sometime in 2024. So that's something I want to read. Then I have some sort of popular memoirs. So this is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, and I understand this is very tragic. It's been sitting on my shelf for a few years. I'd like to read it and maybe unhaul it if I don't think it's worth keeping. Another book that I have never read, this one's a short one, Elie Wiesel's Night. Yeah, this is a used copy, but I'd like to read this because it's considered a classic Holocaust literature. And this is his memoir, right? It's not a novel. Is it? I think it's a memoir. They don't really say. I'm pretty sure it's a memoir. Anyway, so that's why I put it in this category. So yeah, so that's the next one. Then this book I have been meaning to read for years. In fact, I started to read it and then I was just overwhelmed and couldn't get into it. But I know I'll love it. I might try to read this in July when I do my Sustainability July, which is all about nature and our relationship with nature and our call to stewardship and all that stuff. So this might be a good thing to read. It's The Outermost House, A Year of Life on the Great Beach of Cape Cod. And then the last memoir type thing is, I think I was given this book by one of my kids. It's Life in a Jewish Family, Edith Stein, an autobiography, 1891 to 1916. Now, she died at Auschwitz, so this is just her early life. This is volume 1. But she was a really interesting person. She was born into an Orthodox Jewish family. She became an atheist. She became a scholar. She was one of the few women that were in Vienna when philosophy was a big deal, and there were all these famous philosophers. And I forget who she worked for under the mentorship of a particular philosopher that you might know the name of, but I can't remember now. Anyway, this is a lot, but as long as I dive into it pretty deeply, I don't know if I'm going to have the goal to finish it, but just to really, get to see what it's about. So I'm going to try that too. All right, and then, so that was 19, I think, right? So then the remaining 5 I'm going to pick from my Trollope collection, and I'm going to add a little clip of that from the bookshelf. I'm not deciding which Trollope I'm going to read yet. I'm going to figure that out as I go along. But those would be the last 5 books. That would total 24. So 24 books that on my shelves that I plan to read in the year 2024. So that's it. I hope you're doing well and happy reading. So these are my choices for my 5 Trollopes that I am keeping for the family. They were my mother's. Now this one wasn't. This one I owned before. But all these others I got from my mother until I get to here. Wait, where is it? The Chronicle of Barset. I started collecting all of these. I cannot find my copy of The Warden. So I don't know where that went to. I might have lent it. And this is an interesting book up there. Yeah. Anyway, so this is what I'm going to choose from, but I can't choose now. I'm not going to choose now. But I'm going to read 5 of these for my 24 in 24